Good afternoon, BSc final students. Today I want to continue the second episode of Theory of Gravimetric Analysis. So this topic is a little bit descriptive rather than the equations or something other points which generally the chemistry deals. Here I request your patience for understanding the subject because anything without experimental procedure it is very difficult to explain, but I will try my level best to give the concrete idea of what the gravimetric estimation or analysis is there. Now last time I have given some idea about what is gravimetric analysis. The principle of gravimetric analysis is very simple. Here let us take a solution of a substance. For example, let me give you have taken barium chloride and dissolved in water in a test tube. Then to this clear solution of barium chloride, if you add sulfuric acid, then what happens? When you add sulfuric acid, there is a formation of barium sulfate crystals. The crystallization of barium sulfate occurs, 5 ppt form, and finally it will collected at the bottom. So if you see, imagine this thing, whatever I have told. In a test tube, there is a barium chloride clear solution. To this, if you add sulfuric acid, there is a formation of a solid substance which will deposit at the bottom of a test tube. That means the solid particles will settle at the bottom. The mass, the weight of substance which is formed at the as a PPT will settle at the bottom. So the mass will going to settle gravimetrical force acting on it so that it will settle at the bottom. So this is the main idea of gravimetric analysis. Whether it is an ionic form or in a compound form, the weight of the substance will going to settle at the bottom. So the weight of ion or element can be readily calculated from its formula and atomic weight of the constituent element by different methods. The first method is peptization, second one is volatilization, third one is electroanalytical method, and fourth one is thermogravimetric methods. But as far as your syllabus, they have mentioned the peptization method, precipitation method. So in the precipitation method, the substance which is to be determined will be taken in the form of a solution. To this, a substance is added that is called a precipitating agent, and then you get a particular mass or a substance which is settled at the bottom of the container. Then it is filtered and subjected for ignition to get a proper mass which is more stable at the room temperature, and it should contain the chemical composition of whatever the ion in the form of oxide, chloride, sulfide, whatever it may be. So that formation is there in respect of a precipitation method. Well, what is precipitation? Now let us see with a diagram. In a beaker, suppose if you take lead Pb plus 2 ions, and in the second figure, if you add little water and shake it thoroughly, the lead Pb plus 2 as a lead chloride will get dissolved to get a clear solution. Now our aim is to estimate how much amount of lead ions are present in the lead chloride solution we have prepared in the second. To this you have to add some sulfate solution like sulfuric acid. When you add sulfuric acid and just go on shaking slowly, after some time, keeping the reaction mixture, you will find some solid will collected at the bottom, that is called PPT, precipitate. So here the lead chloride dissolved in water is in the solution form. To this, when you add a precipitating agent like sulfuric acid, there is a formation of a PPT of lead sulfide. So this is how the precipitation occurs in case of any solid which is dissolved in a given solution. The another example, best example you can see here, ammonium oxalate when added to ammonium oxalate solution containing NH4 plus and oxalate anion is added to calcium ions present in water. So calcium plus 2 ion will react with oxalate to form calcium oxalate as a solid PPT. Here whatever the calcium ions are there, they will be converted into calcium oxalate. So once the calcium oxalate is formed, now our aim is we should get a stable substance. Calcium oxalate is not stable, therefore it is subjected for heating. On heating, it decomposes again to give a solid calcium oxide, and carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide gases will escape out. So in this example, the thing is very clear. Calcium plus 2 ions are there in water. They when react with the oxalate anion, they will get converted into a precipitate of calcium oxalate. So calcium oxalate is not that much stable, therefore it is subjected for heating. So on heating, it will be get converted into calcium oxide, which is a more perfect substance having definite composition of calcium and oxide. So this is another example in pertaining to precipitation gravimetry. Now precipitation, what exactly it means? So the precipitation process takes place in 3 stages. In the first stage, the ions get converted into colloid, collision with each other, and get converted into a primary nuclei, that is the colloidal particles. Then after supersaturation of ions, the primary nuclei will get converted into full-fledged colloidal particles, and in the last stage, by proper aggregating of the colloidal particles either by heating or adding by some reagent, will get converted into a crystalline precipitate formation. So these are the 3 steps generally involved in the precipitation method. So we will have an example of barium chloride as a crystalline, and silver chloride as a Kerr-D PPT, and gelatinous PPT like ferric chloride or ferric aluminum hydroxide. Ferric hydroxide. Now, procedure for precipitation, as already I have explained, in case of Pb plus 2 ion as a Pb chloride, lead chloride is taken in a beaker, water is added, it is dissolved. To this, when you add sulfuric acid, you will get a PPT of lead sulfate. Now, friends, here you can see the different steps involved for precipitation gravimetry. The first is preparation of a standard solution. Second one is precipitation. Third one is digestion. Fourth step is filtration. Fifth one is washing. Sixth one is drying or igniting. The last one is washing. And the 8th step is calculating exact how much amount of that particular cation is there in the different component form. Well, the first step is preparation of solution. In our example, I have told you, if you take some quantity, known amount of barium chloride, and dissolved in a known volume of water, for example, it may be 250 ml. So for the corresponding to 250 ml, if you want to prepare in terms of molar, or if you want to prepare in terms of a normal solution, you have to calculate using its equivalent weight or molecular weight, how much mass of the substance is to be used to prepare a standard solution. So once the standard solution, which must be clear, the entire substance must be soluble in it. So then that solution is called as a standard solution. So the preparation of solution can be done either in the form of molar or in the form of a normal solution. So once it is formed, then we have to go for the second step, precipitation. So a 25 ml of standard solution is taken in a beaker where it contains some cation like barium, aluminium, iron or nickel, etc. Anyone, not all, any one element is there. Then to this you have to make a precipitation step. So in the precipitation step, a suitable reagent is added so that the solution will be going to form a PPT, precipitate, by adding a suitable reagent. So this can be achieved by adding suitable reagent. That means in the above case, when you add sulfuric acid to the lead chloride, so there starts formation of a lead sulfate PPT. So this is the precipitation occurring process. Then the next one is digestion. Once the PPT starts, it is not easy to get the crystals immediately. It requires certain time. So for that we require a process called digestion. So when you add the precipitating agent to the solution containing a particular cation, you have to use the policeman, means the glass rod, shake it slowly without removing the glass rod, cover with watch glass. Either you have to keep it for heating for 10 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes depending upon the nature of the cation used for the preparation of solution. When you heat it and add alkaline condition or acidic condition for that reaction as per the nature of the solutions, you have to add it. Then you heat it for 30 minutes. So when you heat it for 30 minutes, there occurs slowly colloidal particle first. Colloidal particles slowly get converted into crystalline. So for this it requires 30 to 40 minutes. So after 40 minutes, the well designed crystals appear at the bottom of your beaker. Okay, so this is a conversion of a precipitated colloidal particles into crystalline is called as a digestion process. The next, fourth one, filtration. During filtration, whatever the PPT formed in the above step is subjected for filtration using the filter paper number 41. So what is this 41? 41 is the mesh size of the filter paper. There are 42, 45 or more than that mesh sizes also available. But for barium, iron and aluminium, better you can use either filter paper 41 or filter paper number 45. So this filter paper is a specific filter paper than the ordinary filter paper. Ordinary filter paper has the mesh size of larger size. Here the mesh size is very small. And this filter paper has a specific property that even after heating for a longer period, the filter paper do not have any ash. That is called ashless with a smaller size of a mesh level. So this is what we call is a filter paper, and it can be a circular one. It can be converted into or designed specifically for a filtration and placed on the funnel and then attached to the particular vacuum pump and go for the filtration. So once whatever the unwanted material liquid comes out, it is subjected for washing. So what is the washing? Whatever the residue, that is a PPT left on the filter paper may contain some impurities. Therefore, it is washed with either water or sodium carbonate or ammonium carbonate or the corresponding material which is required for a particular estimation is different. Therefore, using the washing material like either water or ammonium chloride, ammonium nitrate, one has to use either in a hot condition or in a cold condition so that the impurities of any unwanted material present in your PPT are get removed off. So once this is done, then it is subjected for drying. The drying is done by either using hot containers or else by using what you call microwaves. The idea is you have to remove the water present or unwanted cold material which is present in your filter paper containing the PPT. So idea is the filter paper must contain only PPT but not any other material. So this is what dyeing is done. Once the drying is over, then subjected for ignition. Ignition means heating. So you have to heat calcium carbonate strongly so that it will get converted into calcium oxide. So this is process called as a ignition. So ignition is done either by electrical or by the general way of using gas. Or else nowadays there are some electrical furnaces are also available for ignition. Then once the ignition is done, the entire filter paper ashless will removed off automatically, impurities also removed off. Whatever the thing left in your crucible is your weight of the material. So before weighing, you have to weigh the empty weight of the crucible. Then after getting the residue, weight of the substance plus residue, crucible minus the weight of the residue, that will give you the weight of the substance. From that weight, one can calculate how much amount of the precipitate is formed during this particular gravimetric estimation. So there are some requirement for precipitation process. One is you require the particle size of approximately 0.1 milligram, and the precipitate must be pure and should not contain any contaminated material. And the last one is the precipitate must be physical form, stable but not unstable material. So these are some of the important steps. Now, if you see precipitate of a large particle size, precipitates of large particle size. So whenever the precipitate PPT is going to form, so it should have a large particle size because there are some specific advantages. If the particle size is large, the filtration is done in a proper way. If the particle size are very small, they may pass through the filter paper, then there is no use of doing such experiment. Therefore, large particle size can be achieved by adding a suitable reagent to your solution, so that the precipitate PPT will going to form must contain larger size of cations and anions, and they will going to form a most stable material. So the surface area of is not extensive. Accordingly, that means whatever the surface area available for the particle should not be too much large. So it should be in a proper, well designed manner of cations and anions, so that there should not be any increase or decrease of the size. So it is a properly well designed, and these large particles of the PPT are easily washable. For example, barium sulfate, calcium sulfate, they are the very small crystalline substances, and when you see aluminum hydroxide or iron hydroxide, they are somewhat gelatinous in nature. Okay, the requirement for weighing a PPT are the composition should be correspondingly exact to the chemical formula. Whatever the composition of the solution is there, it should be correct with reference to the formula. For example, calcium carbonate, amount number of calcium, number of oxygen and number of carbon should be properly there placed. So should not be neither more number of calcium nor less number of calcium or some other elements present in it. So they should be properly maintained. Then weighing up must be adequate. The weighing must be adequately done in a proper way with a suitable stable chemical substance. And finally, the content of the element being determined in the precipitate should be as low as possible. Okay. Now, if you see the properties of precipitating reagent and the properties of good precipitants. The properties of the precipitating reagent is that they must be specifically stable. Whatever the product of PPT form, it must be specifically stable, and the reagents used for the formation of a precipitate, there should be chemically pure. So, easily filterable and washable precipitate is good for the general method of analysis. Then they must be very specific in their action, and they should not produce any side reaction during their precipitation. So, for example, when you add sulfuric acid to the barium chloride will get converted into barium sulfate, but not any side reaction. For example, if it is contaminated with chloride, so barium again precipitate as a barium chloride, or some it may contain nitrate, the nitrate will again form barium nitrate. So, such thing should not be happen with the situation. Therefore, good precipitate should have a definitely well calculated formula, and at the same time it should have a definite composition, and there should not be any side effect occurring in the reaction system. Okay, and this is already completed. Now, the colloidal state. So, as already I have told you, colloidal state is a one in which the particles are neither a true solution nor a PPT. So, here the particle size is in between 10 to the power minus 4 to 10 to the power minus 7. That is the range for colloidal particles, and which is not suitable for our precipitation. Therefore, if by chance during a chemical reaction there is a formation of a colloidal state, then one has to wait by adding either some electrolyte or some chemical methods or some chemical process. The colloidal particles should get converted into a crystalline one, because the crystalline substances are more stable and unaffected by moisture, unaffected by any side chemical reaction, and if once they are purely isolated, that is the most beautiful end of the experimental procedure. But remember, whenever you add an electrolyte, that is called a precipitating agent, to the solution containing a particular cation, initially they will get converted into colloidal state, and these colloidal state particles are now subjected to convert into crystalline by the following 5 steps. Okay, the first one, generally the colloidal particles are of a smaller in size, or a smaller ions or molecules. They can be converted into a proper structure by chemical means. Okay. Then the thing is that the colloidal particles are to be converted into a crystalline particle by either by heating process or by adding some chemical reagent. Whatever the reagent added for a reaction should not harm the PPT. There should not be any side reaction for that. So, the colloidal particle is one of the important stage during the precipitation. Now, when you think of the crystallization precipitation, when the crystals are to be obtained, then they should undergo some specific processes. So, the process is coagulation, peptidization, formation of amorphous or amorphous structures. Okay, so all these are some other factors which will come across the process of gravimetric estimation. Coagulation. If a small amount of electrolyte is added to the colloidal solution, the colloidal particles coagulate into a larger aggregate which that sinks at the bottom of the vessel. Okay, when an electrolyte is added to a colloidal, so it becomes a larger size and sinks at the bottom. A coagulation effect is explained specifically with the assumption that the colloidal particles absorb oppositely chemical charged ions from electrolyte to those primarily absorbed. According to the change of the colloidal particle are decreased so much that they can join together. The coagulation effect of electrolytes increases rapidly with increasing the valency ions of the opposite charge. Then comes peptidization. Upon washing the PPT with water, part of the adsorbed electrolyte is removed. The electrolyte concentration in the subsequent liquid may fall below the coagulation value. There is a minimum amount of electrolyte necessary in case of fluctuation. The precipitate may pass into colloidal solution again. So, peptidization is also one step may be involved during the conversion of colloidal particles into a crystalline. The formation of amorphous precipitate in the addition to all these causes the rapid formation of enormous number of very minute crystalline nuclei in the liquid. These grow not by deposition of the substances on their surface, but by joining to form a large aggregate which may sink by gravitational force at the bottom of the vessel. Amorphous properties precipitates have enormous surface area and therefore absorb radially various extraneous substances from the solution. Since the bonds between the individual crystal nuclei in the agreement are relatively weak, therefore the precipitate formation may sometimes affected by amorphous material. Now with this idea, let me stop, because in the beginning itself I have told that whatever this topic gravimetric analysis is there, it basically involves explanation part. So in ending this particular session, let me remind you whatever I have discussed now. Now the thing is, during the gravimetric estimation, peptidization is most important part, and this precipitation is most important part, and which can be achieved by adding a suitable reagent to the electrolytic reagent to the solution, and whereby the precipitation can be done, and this precipitation can be measured or weighed by using different processes. So in the next episode, I will deal with some other part of this. Okay, so with these few words, I don't want to bore you. Let me come again next week with new ideas in this topic. So thank you one and all.